I'm going to tell you guys a story first before I get into actually giving you guys the principles and the strategies for how to get out of your head. Getting out of your head is actually probably the number one thing, the number one skill that you can develop to become amazing with women. So I, in 2013, was having some serious issues with just my social life and with my dating life. Anytime when I not only just wanted to meet a girl that I was interested in, say at like a house party or just at a bar. Well, back then I wasn't really going to bars because I was a little younger back then, but just mainly at house parties, just during the day in my classes, in college, stuff like that. Or anytime I wanted to meet a friend, I would feel extreme social anxiety. I would feel like this sense inside of me. Back then I didn't even know that it even was anxiety because I had no emotional intelligence. I didn't understand what emotions were. I heard about the concept of emotions, and I thought that emotions were just this vague idea that was thrown around, like in psychology. And I also only thought that women had emotions. I didn't even really know that as a man that I would have emotions. I just felt this sense of extreme discomfort socially around girls that I was, wanting to talk to, around people that I wanted to become friends with, and I didn't really know how to handle it. So I went online, as most of you guys probably did as well, and you start looking for different solutions to how to improve your dating life, to how to improve, your social life, things like that. And I discovered this whole world of pickup. And I went a little crazy with it. I started to go down this rabbit hole of learning step by step exactly what to do in every single situation. And I became so methodical with it that I had this pre-scripted idea of what I would do in literally every single moment. What I would say when I would first meet a girl on a date, what I would say to start a conversation with her, what conversation threads that I would follow, what I would say when she would ask who's paying for the date, or how to basically navigate through that situation, what I would say during the actual date. Literally, I had a step-by-step process for every single thing. And the problem was that it was exhausting. It was mentally draining me. I had this whole idea of what I would do, how I would almost micromanage my behavior, how I would look at her, how I would speak to her, how I would position my body. Everything was so logical. And it was exhausting. It was killing me inside because I was putting an extreme amount of pressure on myself to do everything perfectly. I was extremely in my head and just basically trying to play chess. I was thinking, okay, if I would do this, then she would do that. If I would do this, then she would do that. And I'm just curious out of you guys, how many of you guys feel like you micromanage a lot of your social interactions or dating interactions? Just raise your hand if you feel like that's something that you guys are going through, or maybe have experienced in the past. You feel that way, okay, cool. Bryce, I know you said you get in your head sometimes as well.
Yeah, I wouldn't say it's pre-planned, but it's more just in the moment, switches.
Okay.
Yeah, you need to talk to her, and then something instantly says, oh, I'm worried about this, what's she gonna say, what's she gonna think, and then it switches, and then I don't do it, and then it lives on. So I don't know if that's kind of what you're talking about.
Yeah, no, it is. I mean, to me, what I was going through was an extreme version of that, right? And I went through different levels of going through, I would call this pre-planning and being in my head, right? The first level was planning literally word by word by word what I was gonna say to a girl. To the point where I wasn't even, I had no sense of personality, no sense of identity that I was bringing to the conversation. It was okay, this is what to say in this moment, then I'm gonna say this, then I'm gonna create this reaction in her, and everything was extremely just methodical, ridiculously. Then it got to a point where I realized that, okay, maybe that's not working, because a lot of the girls that I was being super methodical with just weren't interested in me. After the first date, I had a really low, I don't really want to even call it a success rate. it was more of like a really low conversion rate where girls would just not want to see me again. They weren't really interested in me because they could just feel how extremely inauthentic I was, how pre-planned I was. And if you guys think about it, think about why I was being so pre-planned and methodical. Because I was scared as fuck to be myself. I was terrified to open up about my insecurities. I was terrified of just showing my real self. And that's why I created this whole process that I would follow, that I knew that I almost thought without a doubt would get me the outcome that I wanted, but it never even really did. So then I realized that, okay, pre-scripting every single line that I'm going to say to not only girls, but just people in general isn't going to work. So let me take a step back and maybe just focus on high-level concepts, like act confidently, basically embody these different behavior patterns, like stand in a way that's very confident. Look at people, I know you asked about eye contact, like look at people in a way that's very, very confident and hold eye contact. No matter what you do, just hold eye contact with them. Speak in a very deep voice. Like these high-level concepts. Guess what, guys? That didn't work either. I still felt really inauthentic. I still felt extremely just insecure. I felt like I was still really controlling other people's reactions and micromanaging what I was doing. And they could feel that. They could feel that I was still not being myself. Despite not planning every line, I was planning my behaviors. I was planning what I would do. I was planning kind of high-level different actions that I would take. Still, people got a very, very, very inauthentic, weird vibe from me. And I didn't really get a lot of success with women either, kind of following that plan. So then I was like, okay, the lines don't work, the behaviors don't work, trying to mimic the right behaviors and always be confident doesn't work. So let me focus on the inner game. Let me start to tell myself affirmations that I know that somebody who's confident tells themselves. Let me try to almost like feed myself the thoughts and the beliefs of somebody who's really good with women. So I would say like this is when I was probably around 21, 22, I would not plan what I was saying or doing, but I was planning what I was thinking. So I would tell myself things like, if she doesn't like me, then I'm going to walk away. Or I would tell myself things like, I'm confident, I'm enough, I'm worthy. And I would repetitively tell myself these affirmations and these feedback loops. And I'm curious to hear if you guys ever did this yourself, is that when you're in a conversation with a girl and you tell yourself, I'm enough, I'm good enough, I'm worthy, and you try to almost force feed yourself these positive thoughts, but still feel like they don't really sit well with you. Has anybody ever done that? You've done that? You've done that. Okay, cool. Cool. I'm just trying to get a gauge for who's tried what. Okay. So that was me. And that was still not working. Because why it wasn't working, because inside, I still felt super uncomfortable. As long as I could remember, I always felt this deep pit of shame, fear, inadequacy, anxiety around different people that I wanted to be friends with that in my mind I labeled as like higher value or higher status, around pretty girls, in high tense social situations, like let's say I wanted to talk to a group of people, I would feel this pit in my stomach of just worry and like negativity and inadequacy. And I tried all of these different external methods to kind of overcome those fears and those insecurities. So tried the lines, tried the behaviors, tried even the positive feedback loops. None of it worked. And then I remember this one specific moment where I decided to go out to learn how to talk to people and talk to women, where I told myself, you know what? I'm going to plan nothing. Absolutely nothing. I'm not going to plan what I'm going to say. I'm not going to plan how I'm going to act. I'm not going to plan what I'm going to do in a social situation. I'm not going to have any sort of outcome that I'm tied to about bringing anybody home or getting anybody's number. I'm not going to plan what I'm going to tell myself. I'm literally just going to be present. Because this was around the time that I got into just general self-development, and I was reading books like The Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle. I'm curious, has anybody read like any of those books about spirituality? Just general high-level self-development books about how to be present, how to just be really grounded in the moment and embrace what's happening right now. I got into that whole world of spirituality, and they were talking about how in that book of, say, Eckhart Tolle's book of Power of Now, he was talking a lot about how if you are wanting a certain reaction or planning for a certain outcome, then you're being needy. If you're more invested in what somebody else thinks of you and you're trying to control, whatever they're going to do for you, or you're trying to get something out of them, then you're needy. If you're not being totally present to the moment, and if you're in your head and you're pre-planning what you're going to say, you're pre-planning what you're going to do, if you're controlling, what's going to happen out of a certain situation, you're being needy. You're not being authentic. And the only way to truly be authentic is to be present. And I was like, oh shit, I've never done that before. So I just remember that moment where I just completely dropped everything. All of the thoughts, all of the pre-planned behaviors, all the scripts, and I was just completely present. And that was the night that I had the most fun, and that was also the night that I got by far the best reactions from women, when I had absolutely nothing planned. And guys, I'm telling you, that was the scariest moment in my life, where I realized, that was the day that I realized that I don't need to control anything with my logical mind. And it's kind of like I'm giving you guys a speech right now, is that I have the idea of what I'm going to talk about. I have nothing planned. I'm speaking completely off the cuff. And this is the same skill that I developed back in, I would say 2017, 2016, where I just dropped all the lines, dropped all the behaviors, and I just let things flow. And this was also around the time where I started to watch guys that did really well with women. I would go to the same bars with my friends, or sometimes I went out by myself, and I just watched. There was a group of people that were into this whole pickup community, and I would watch the way that they would act, and every single one of them was standing at the wall like this, pulled up into their head, super stiff, super tense, working themselves up for a good 30, 40, 50 minutes to even make a single approach, and their approach didn't really look natural whatsoever. It looked like everything was controlled and planned. And then there was the guys that just would walk into the bar being like, hey, what's up, bro? How you doing? What's going on? Oh, hey, what's up? And it was just so natural. There was nothing planned. There was nothing controlled, nothing micromanaged. And I was like, I want to be like that guy. I don't want to plan anything. I want to be able to just have this good energy. I want to be this charismatic social guy who's just able to walk into any environment and just connect with people. I see a girl that I want to talk to, I want to be able to go talk to her. I don't want to hold myself back. And I also don't want to come in with this whole plan and go into my notepad of, okay, I'm going to say this, I'm going to use this line, and I did X amount of approaches today. I didn't want to be that guy. It just felt so weird, and it felt so inauthentic to me. So that was when I had the biggest epiphany of my entire dating journey, was I realized, and I had to do a lot of thinking about this too, because I watched the guys that were super good with women, they were naturals. Then I kind of went back and I observed myself. I observed the guys that weren't doing really well with women, and I saw this massive gap between how they were acting. But I wanted to go a layer deeper, and I wanted to think, okay, what is the mindset and what is kind of the way of being between the guy who's a natural, who never had any problems with women, who never had any issues socially, who just made friends, who started to date the girls that he wanted to without even thinking about it, versus the guy who's always had a lot of problems. And I boiled it down to only one thing. The guy who's a natural is in his body, and the guy who's not a natural and who struggles with women is in his head. That is it. That is the number one distinction that I saw. That one guy was thinking, he was analyzing, he was controlling logically, and then the other guy was feeling. One guy wasn't in touch with his emotions, he was in his head, and the other guy was in his body, and he was totally in touch with all of his feelings. The ones that were pleasant, feelings like joy, confidence, courage, and also the feelings that aren't so pleasant, like shame, sadness, anxiety. And he didn't really judge any of them. One guy had a ton of self-judgment, a ton of self-criticism. Everything was either right or wrong, good or bad. And the other guy was just like, yeah, this is me, what's up? And there was nothing at all that he was, really judged himself for. I'm not saying that a guy who's a natural is not perfect, that he never has any like negative intrusive thoughts. Of course they do, everyone does. We're all human. But for the most part, that was the main difference. One guy was thinking, the other guy was feeling. So that's when I got really excited. I was like, okay, what if I'm gonna go completely against the grain, stop doing what the whole dating community is doing, where they're planning every single behavior and step that they need to take to attract women, and I'm just going to explore my inner world. Because I thought to myself, like, why can't I be a natural? I had trauma when I was younger. I went through, emotional abandonment in some cases. I was neglected in some cases by my family and by friends. I was bullied and stuff like that. So I did have a lot of like self-defeating thoughts that I carried, and a lot of like negative intrusive dialogue that I carried, and that kind of bled into my dating life as I grew older. But I thought, why can't I unpack all of this baggage that I have from when I was younger and return to the state of just being present? Because I've read stories about people who have done it, so I was like, why can't I do it? I think I can. So I started to explore my inner world, and I started to kind of, number one, get in touch with my emotions, and at first it was really difficult because I was so used to thinking, so I would have to constantly remind myself to come right back to my body. That was when I started to meditate a lot. And one really good habit that I'm just going to give you guys off the bat is the habit of becoming aware of when you're in your head and not judging yourself for it. So the biggest step that you could take to get out of your head and to get in touch with your emotions isn't just to feel. That's a huge part of it, is to start to feel and get a feeling for the different types of emotions, the heavier ones, the lighter ones, the darker ones, the lighter ones, but also to notice when you're in your head. Because for somebody who's used to being very logical and analytical, it's a completely different paradigm that you're in when you're thinking versus when you're feeling. And it's going to be a journey that you're going to go on. You're not going to immediately just go from being in your head to being in your body. You're going to have moments of being in your body, and then you're going to snap right back to being in your head. And you have to accept that it's going to be a gradual process that you guys are going to go through. And that it might not, you guys are going to make a lot of progress this weekend, but you might need to do a lot more work. Maybe that's going to be more work on your own. Maybe that's going to be coming back for another workshop. But it's a process. It's a lifelong process that I am still doing myself, that I'm still on, where I'm constantly doing inner work. I'm constantly reminding myself of when I'm in my head. So this is exactly kind of the first thing that you guys could do, is whenever you're noticing that you're thinking. And when you're thinking is when you are having thoughts about something in the future or something in the past. That is essentially what thinking is. It means that you are disconnected from the present moment. So when you're having a thought about, what am I going to have for lunch? What is this girl going to think of me? Is she going to react poorly to me? I've had a girl that dumped me in the past, and she kind of reminds me of a girl that gave me a bad reaction 6 months ago or a year ago. And you're noticing that your brain is taking you to all these different places. It takes you a few hours into the future, it takes you months back into the past. Those are all signs of that you're just in your head. And the way to get out of your head is just to remind yourself that, hey, I'm in my head. And you can use a word, like I like to use the word thinking. I like to just tell myself, oh, I'm thinking. And simply just by reminding yourself that you're thinking, it's like you snap yourself out of the dream. Because when you're in your head, guys, you're not actually living life. You're kind of experiencing life through this filter of your thoughts. And it's not just about not being attractive to women. It's about the moments, these beautiful moments, like the one that you guys have right now, where you're listening to me talking about this, where you're enjoying the comfort of your seats when you guys are in Miami. They're flying by. These moments are flying by. When you're on your phone, thinking about stuff, thinking about how other people are going to react to you, worrying about something, reminiscing about the past. And I'm not saying that it's never a bad thing to set aside time to think about the past and to have those nostalgic thoughts or to plan ahead for the future. But most of your life should be lived right now. Because if it's not, you're going to feel a lot of regret later on. And your life is just passing right by. So that's the number one thing that you guys could do, is just remind yourself when you're in your head and do it in a way that is compassionate. That's the other component to it, is awareness and non-judgment. Because a big flaw, a big pitfall that I see a lot of people falling into is when they realize that they're in their head, they start to beat themselves up. They're like, I'm in my head. I'm a fucking loser. I'm so insecure. I'm so weird. Everybody else probably sees me being in my head. And they start to get really down on themselves. At least I did for a really long time. So that's the second component, is just become aware that you're in your head. Become aware that you're thinking about the future, you're thinking about the past, and just be nice to yourself. Be like, oh, it's okay. I'm in my head. I'm working on myself. It's all good. Come right back to the present moment. And the more that you guys develop this habit of noticing that you're in your head, that you're noticing that you're lost in your thoughts, coming right back to right here, right now, the more that this will become your default state. You guys are used to thinking. It's almost like a disease in a sense. You're obsessed with thinking. It's your comfort zone. It's where you're safe. You're safe in your thoughts. I always felt safe in my thoughts. I always felt like I needed to understand everything. And if we want to use an example specifically to dating, like you see a girl that you want to approach, and you want to make sure that it goes perfectly. You want to make sure that nobody sees you approach. You want to wait for the exact right moment. You want to wait for the moment where she's not on her phone, where there's nobody talking to her. You want to make sure that she's standing and she's literally like looking directly at you. And you want to make sure that your body language is perfect and this is right and your clothes are right and your hair looks good. And you're waiting for that exact right moment. But ultimately, you're just in your head. And you're using this kind of like insane perfectionism as a way to keep yourself safe. Because you're simply just scared to be present. You're scared of being in your body. You're scared of feeling the emotions. You're scared of living. That's what you're really scared of. When you're in your head, you're essentially just scared of living. And you're using thoughts and logic and analysis to keep yourself safe and to protect yourself from the beauty of life. So that's the number one thing that you guys could do, is just become aware of the fact that you're in your head. Be nice to yourself. Don't judge yourself, because when you judge yourself, you only go deeper and deeper into your head. And the second component to it is start to feel your emotions. Start to develop an emotional palette. Start to understand what different emotions are and don't judge yourself for them. Everyone feels different things, right? So I'm going to go really quickly through the emotional scale right now with you guys. And I want to give you guys a taste for what it is so you can label it and be aware of it in the moment. And I want you guys to start to see emotions as neutral. I don't want you guys to see them as bad. I don't want you guys to see them as good. They're just feedback. They're just your body giving you signals, and your subconscious giving you signals. It's your body speaking to you. It's your body reminding you of something. That's it, right? It's like you feel fear. It's your body just reminding you that this might be a scary situation, that there might potentially be a negative outcome that comes out of it. Usually it's not rational, but it's just your body's feedback. And a lot of it is conditioned feedback based on your past. So the way to get out of your head, notice that you're in it, notice that you're thinking, and then just start to feel emotions. So if we want to work through the whole scale of emotions, at the bottom we have shame. And shame is probably the hardest emotion to accept, because it kind of just traps you. It completely stifles you. And it's kind of like a master emotion that keeps everything else stuck. And shame feels really, really, really heavy. And then over shame, you have emotions like apathy. And apathy feels like really numb. You know, the sense of emptiness, loneliness. Above that, you have sadness. Sadness is usually this really, to me, it feels like a really like heavy, like salty even feeling. that usually comes up and I feel it in my throat. Then you have fear, and fear feels like this surge, this really anxious surge. And it could take different forms and different intensities, right? Like sometimes you could feel just a little bit of fear, just a little nervous. Sometimes you could feel completely paralyzed by an emotion like anxiety. Then over that, you have a feeling like neediness, like craving, like a desire, like you want something. And when I look at you guys, by the way, I could tell exactly what you're feeling. I could tell who is stuck in what state. And it's really interesting. So that's desire. And then over desire, you have an emotion like pride, and that's like a false sense of confidence. It feels like confidence, but it almost feels like a dirty confidence. It feels like you're better than other people, in that it's a very fleeting feeling that's here right now, but it might go away. And then over that, you'll start to feel courage, a feeling like courage, which is more of like a cleaner confidence, where it's a sense of you having a challenge, but you being able to handle it and being able to overcome it. So a lot of the time when you guys see a girl that you don't want to talk to or that you're scared of talking to and you still go for it, you start to feel a lot of courage. That's a byproduct of that. And then over courage, you start to get the sense of just acceptance, that it's okay. Like yesterday, we spoke about relaxing into fear, accepting that, everything's going to be okay. That's that sense of acceptance. When you're beginning to become at peace with what is. And then that you move into love is where you start to not only accept what is and what you feel in other people, you also start to love. You start to like genuinely enjoy. And eventually you end up into like a state like peace and tranquility. So those are the main emotions that I wanted to kind of go through to give you guys a taste of what's to come during our model work. I want to have you guys begin to label these different emotions as they're coming up. And the most important thing, the most important kind of step that you could take to get out of your head is to not judge yourself for having these emotions. They're just emotions. They might feel uncomfortable. They might feel really good, really pleasant. But the less kind of like stories and less judgment that you have about these different feelings, the more attractive you're going to become, the more confident you're going to become, and the more you're going to become a natural with women.